You need to go, how you add me in that post? At Pooh Shiesty too now. Y'all stay adding the Brazy, go add Pooh. Let Pooh know it's up too. Let Pooh know it like that. Cause y'all must think I'm or something. You ain't even no gangster, boy. You tripping, you lame as.
This situation just took a turn that nobody saw coming. Pooh Shiesty and HoneyComb Brazy. The tension between these two just reached a critical point. HoneyComb Brazy was spotted outside on the block in Mobile, Alabama, directly calling out Pooh Shiesty by name. And what you just heard is not a diss track. It's not a Twitter argument. It's not two rappers playing industry politics. That is a man who has already lost his grandparents because of street conflicts, standing outside again saying he is prepared to face whatever consequences come his way. These two men move in silence. Yet somehow that silence is the loudest thing in the room right now. By the time I'm done breaking this down for y'all today, you're going to understand exactly how we got here. Because this situation did not start with a diss track. It did not start with a tweet. It started years before any of us were watching, deep in the street networks that connect Memphis, Tennessee, to Mobile, Alabama, in ways most people have no idea about. Let me break it down. Stay locked in. All right, gang. To understand why that live hit different, why HoneyComb's words carry a weight that most rappers' words simply don't, you need the full picture on both of these men, not just a rap resume. The real story. HoneyComb Brazy, Mobile, Alabama.
Born and raised in one of the toughest areas along the Gulf Coast. This man has been sharing his life on social media since before it became a planned content strategy. Before going live from real situations was even a trend, HoneyComb was doing it simply because that was his everyday life. His music, his live streams, and his posts, all of it reflects a reality that most people only ever watch in documentaries. He is not acting authentically. He never learned how to be anything else. But here is what sets HoneyComb apart from every other street rapper you have heard. This man has already faced the deepest kind of loss connected to the life he lives. And I do not mean legally, I mean personally, in a way that reshapes a person at their core and never allows them to return to who they once were. In February 2021, HoneyComb Brazy's grandparents, Tony and Isla Lewis, lost their lives in their Mobile, Alabama home. And the way it happened is what shook the entire rap community. Individuals connected to an alleged drug figure named Darren Southall went to that house with the intent of sending a message to HoneyComb through his family. Shots were fired. A stray round hit multiple oxygen tanks stored inside the home. The tanks ignited. The house was quickly consumed by flames. Tony and Isla Lewis were unable to escape. And the spark behind it all, a Facebook post, something shared by one of HoneyComb's associates that upset the wrong person. And two elderly people who had nothing to do with any of it ended up losing their lives. And that is the reality this man carries. When you hear him during that live, when HoneyComb says he stands on what he claims, that is not a rapper using intense words for attention. That is a man who has already seen his family lost because of the life around him, who has processed that pain, who has faced the worst possible outcome up close, and who has decided he is still not backing down. Keep that in your head for everything that comes after this, because it changes how every single word on that live sounds. Now, Pooh Shiesty, South Memphis, one of the most talked about artists to come out of that city in a generation, signed to Gucci Mane's 1017 records. Back in Blood, Guard Up, Twerksome, went from a neighborhood to platinum records faster than almost anyone from his city ever had. Memphis has always produced legends, but Pooh had something rare. Street credibility and mainstream appeal locked in at the exact same time. Then came the federal gun charge. He served his time. He came home. He has been rebuilding, releasing new music, reconnecting with fans, trying to recapture what the system interrupted. On the surface, it looks like a man focused entirely on his future, choosing his career over everything else. And then HoneyComb Brazy starts saying his name from a block in Mobile, Alabama. Here is the real story that almost everyone covering the situation is completely missing. This situation did not start with a diss track. It did not start with a subliminal lyric or a shady Instagram comment. It started in invisible connections that have been linking Memphis street networks to Alabama ones for years before either of these men had a record deal. People look at Memphis and Mobile and assume these are two separate worlds, different states, different cultures. But here's what they do not understand about how the South actually moves. These cities are connected through alliances, through long-standing ties, through people who grew up in one city and relocated to another, through artists who built their careers in the same lane and ended up in each other's orbit, whether they wanted to or not. HoneyComb Brazy already had active documented issues with multiple artists operating in the same Memphis-adjacent circles as Pooh Shiesty. These are not just music industry rivalries. These are situations that carry real influence across state lines. And in street culture, the rules are simple and they do not. If your people have issues with someone, you inherit that tension. You do not get to say that is not your business when your circle is involved. The alliance makes that choice for you before you even say a word. So HoneyComb Brazy is already moving through a world where Memphis is not neutral territory. And then you add Pooh Shiesty into situation. And specifically, you add the man who is basically Pooh's brother, Big 30. Now, Big 30 is not just a label. Mate, he and Pooh have described each other as brothers since before either of them had a deal. Where one goes, the other's presence follows automatically. That is just the code. But here's the detail that connects Big 30 directly to Alabama and changes the whole picture. In October 2020, Big 30 was taken into custody in Birmingham, Alabama, traveling from Memphis. Cash, a loaded firearm, and substances were found in the car. Birmingham is not mobile, but it is in the same state. And in the geography of Southern street culture, that presence matters. It shows you that Pooh Shiesty's closest associate, his brother, has been moving through Alabama, has connections in Alabama, and has history in Alabama, which means by the code that both these men live by, Pooh has ties to whatever is happening in that state, whether he chose it or not. Put all of that together. HoneyComb Brazy's existing issues with Memphis-adjacent circles, Big 30's documented presence in Alabama, Pooh Shiesty being inseparable from Big 30, and overlapping networks between Mobile and Memphis that stretch back years. These two men were always going to end up in each other's orbit. The question was never if, it was just when, and what would set it off when it finally happened. And what sparked it. That is where this story shifts from street dynamics into something almost unexpected. Are you ready? Because the thing that turned all of that background tension into a full public moment is not what you would expect. It started with a video game. Pooh Shiesty's side allegedly encountered HoneyComb Brazy in a video game, eliminated him, and then publicly joked about it, mocking him online. And I know what you're thinking. A video game? That is what started this. But here is what you need to understand. In the world these men move in, that kind of public disrespect, no matter what platform it happens on, is a test. It is a prod. It is someone pushing at you and watch and see how you respond. It is similar to stepping on someone's Jordans in a club and then laughing about it. It is a deliberate signal. We do not respect you. And HoneyComb Brazy is not someone who has ever let a signal like that go unanswered. So he went live right then outside on the block. And you can hear it in his voice from the very first second. This is not someone putting on a show for the camera. This is someone who has made a decision, he said. And I am pulling from the live directly here. Y'all are supposed to be going up right now. You almost think I am some kind of joke. You have everything in the world. And you are out here calling out my people on a video game. But when it is real life, y'all do not respond the same way. That is the type of people y'all are. That right there was a statement. That was HoneyComb Brazy drawing a clear line publicly and challenging the other side to cross it. But then the live shifted into something even more revealing, because HoneyComb stopped talking about Pooh Shiesty's side and started talking about his own city, Mobile, Alabama, and his own people. And this is where you really feel the full weight of what is happening. He said, every time I speak, y'all turn against Brazy. Y'all only want to come at me, but you will not go at Pooh. Y'all are letting people from out of town come through Alabama like that, and y'all do not respond. That is a man who feels let down by a city in real time. And if you understand anything about street psychology, that is one of the most intense emotional states a man like HoneyComb Brazy can be in. Because now it is not just about Pooh Shiesty anymore. Now it is about whether Mobile has his back. Whether everything he has given to that city, including his grandparents' lives, means anything to the people around him. The pressure is not just coming from the outside now. It is coming from every direction at once. And then he said something toward the end of that live that should have made everybody pause. He said, I am ready to stand on that. If you catch me, do what you feel. Yeah, I am serious about that. This is a man who buried his grandparents because of a Facebook post, who understands more than almost anyone what these situations can turn into when they move beyond the internet and into real life. And he is still standing there on the block on live, saying he will not back down. That is not a rapper using strong words for attention. That is a man who has already accepted the worst possible outcome. Now, here is where people started connecting the dots. And I need you to follow me carefully here, because this goes much deeper than a live rant on social media. First, on that live, HoneyComb Brazy brought up LDO. And if you know anything about the landscape of mobile street dynamics, that name is not random. These are affiliations, groups with real geography, real history, and real membership that existed long before any rap career. The fact that HoneyComb is mentioning LDO in the same moment as calling out Pooh Shiesty's side tells you something important. This situation has already expanded beyond two individuals. It is involving an entire group. It is reaching neighborhoods. It is reaching allegiances that have nothing to do with music and everything to do with who holds influence in Mobile, Alabama. Second, HoneyComb Brazy mentioned Pop Smoke on that live. He said, "Long live Pop Smoke. We move like that for real." On the surface, that sounds like a tribute. But listen to the context he said it in. He said it right after talking about showing up and standing on what he claims. That is not just a tribute. That is a message. That is HoneyComb saying that he and his people move with that same mindset regardless of the cost. And everybody in this culture knows what happened to Pop Smoke. That mention is not just remembrance. It is a signal. Third, and this is the part that should have had everybody paying closer attention. HoneyComb Brazy was completely clear on that live that this has nothing to do with rap. He said, "I am not going back and forth with y'all. That Alabama situation has nothing to do with Brazy as an artist. I am in my own lane. This is not rap tension. This is not about music." When someone who has a platform, a fan base, a career, and everything to gain from keeping things within music clearly says this is not about music, you have to take that seriously, because it means whatever resolution exists for the situation will not come from a diss track or a label phone call. It has to happen through the same channels these environments rely on to resolve issues. And those channels are far less forgiving than the internet. And then there is Pooh Shiesty silence. Some people read that as him staying focused, like he is above engaging, like he is too locked in on his comeback to get pulled into drama. But there's another way to look at it, and people familiar with this culture understand it. Memphis does not produce men who ignore serious situations. Pooh Shiesty did not build what he built, go through what he went through, come home from a federal case, and start rebuilding by being someone who lets things slide when they actually matter. His silence might not mean peace. It might mean something is being handled quietly behind the scenes. Alright, where does this stand right now? HoneyComb Brazy has not backed down, has not walked a single word back, and has not reached out publicly to resolve anything. He put his position on record outside on the block and left it there for everyone to see. A man who wanted an exit path would have found one by now. He is not looking for one. Pooh Shiesty has continued moving like someone focused on getting his career back in order after his time away. New music, fan engagement, rebuilding momentum. On the surface, it looks like the smart move, like someone chooses future over conflict. But here's the problem. HoneyComb does not read that silence as peace. He reads it as avoidance. And in the culture both of these men operate in, avoidance does not reduce pressure. It makes it build. Every day that passes without a resolution, the tension grows until something changes. What happened on social media after the live drop told you everything. Mobile was divided. Some people are standing with Brazy. Some are saying he is moving the wrong way. Some are staying noticeably quiet and watching from a distance. Memphis and 1,017 adjacent circles are on alert. Spectators treating it like entertainment. And somewhere underneath all that noise, real people in real cities are making real decisions about where they stand and what they're willing to do about it. The part that stands out most when you sit with all of this is something HoneyComb Brazy said almost in passing on that live. He said, all Brazy was trying to do was bring the city back together. That was his stated intention going in. He was not trying to create a bigger issue. He was frustrated. He felt disrespected when all he was trying to do was build something. He reached out toward unity and felt like he was mocked instead. And now here we are. A man who wanted community ended up in conflict. A man who lost his grandparents over a Facebook post is now back in the middle of a public conflict that exists on social media. The irony of that is not lost on anyone who has been paying close attention. Here is where you need to step back for a moment, because there is something happening in this culture that this situation is just one example of. HoneyComb Brazy's grandparents lost their lives because of a Facebook post, not a diss track.